Hello, my name's Adele. Welcome to the Managing Fatigue with Health Conditions workshop, part 1. Please feel free to press pause at any time that you need to take a break, you need to get up and stretch your legs or go make a cuppa. Just press that pause button. There will be points during the presentation where I'll suggest maybe pressing pause so that you can have a think about some of the tools that we've been discussing, but please feel free just to press pause whenever you need to take a break. The aims of the fatigue workshops are to look at how fatigue affects us, to discuss ways of managing chronic fatigue, to explore practical tools to support our energy levels and general well-being, while it's also important to note that the tools that we will discuss are not a cure for fatigue, but they'll help you to self-manage the fatigue with the aim of taking back a little control. So let's have a little look about what the workshops are not. So as we said, they're not a cure or a treatment. They're not medical advice, but they do complement medical advice. So they're tools and techniques that you can use at home to complement the information that's been provided by your GP, hospital consultants, etc. The workshop is not meant to be an exhaustive list. It's a starting point for you to look at other tools that can help to manage your fatigue. And they're not condition specific, so always double check with your GP if you're unsure if something will benefit your specific health condition. And it's not one size fits all. Everybody's different, so what works for some won't work for the others and vice versa. So it's about finding what works for you. So there'll be a variety of tools that we discuss, and it's about finding the right combination for yourself to help manage your fatigue. So let's start by looking at what are the common symptoms of chronic fatigue. So feeling extremely tired all of the time. So we all get tired when we've done a lot of activities such as going to the gym, or we've got jet lag after a holiday, or we're recovering from the flu. But this is different. This is feeling extremely tired all of the time. So it doesn't go away with rest. Struggling to find the energy for daily living activities. So your fatigue might be to the point where you struggle to get washed and dressed and do the cleaning and go to the shops. Still feeling tired after resting or sleeping. So as we've said, some people may go to the gym, feel really tired afterwards, have a bit of a rest and feel okay. With chronic fatigue associated to health conditions, that tiredness can last and can affect your sleeping. Taking a long time to recover after physical activity. Problems with sleeping itself, so that might be waking in the night, problems getting to sleep. And problems with things like brain fog, so that's problems with thinking, memory, concentration, things like that. Another thing that some people struggle with is something called post-exertional malaise, and that occurs in some health conditions where you might feel tired at the time, but the actual severe fatigue doesn't kick in till the day after or the day after that, so you get that delayed response. So it's important to receive a diagnosis for what's causing your chronic fatigue. So there are some causes of chronic fatigue that are treatable, so such as anemia. If you have anemia, it may be that you're low on iron, and some tablets from the GP may correct that and help to relieve the fatigue. Other health conditions, there is no treatment or cure as such, but we can learn to self-manage the fatigue to help us get the most out of the day, which is what we're looking at today. And again, if your fatigue is worse than normal or the symptoms are different to normal, it's always worth getting a checkup with your GP just to make sure you haven't got anything else adding to the fatigue that's treatable. Now, if we just take a moment to consider what type of things trigger your fatigue or make it worse. So whether you want to write a list or just have a think in your head, if you just press pause a moment and just have a think, and then we'll have a look at some other common reasons that other people have suggested. Here are some examples of triggers. Things like overdoing things, high emotions, whether that be positive or negative emotions, poor sleep, deadlines when you don't have time to rest, infection, maybe you are fighting a cold or the flu on top of your normal long-term health condition. Extreme weather, sometimes people feel extreme heat adds to their exhaustion. No time to rest, worsening of the health condition itself, feeling overwhelmed. Pain is one that is often mentioned, stress, sensory stimulation, so too much noise or too bright lights. All of those are examples of triggers, and there are lots more, and I'm sure you've come up with a lot yourself. Now we're going to take a minute just to have a look at something called the boom or bust cycle. So this is something that's very common to people who are struggling with long-term chronic fatigue. So if we have a look, and on the diagram here there's an area starred with overactivity. So you might have a period of overactivity. So that can be, a big event or just a busy day, or, whatever it is that has pushed you past your limits that day, which leads to a period of severe fatigue. That fatigue makes you rest and go to bed. So you have a period of underactivity while you're recovering. But then you start to feel better, and the temptation is to try and catch up all those piles of washing that you've been leaving. So you go and put the washing in, hang it out, bring it in several loads later, and you're back into the overactivity, and then the cycle begins again. You're back to the severe fatigue and so on. That's called the boom or bust cycle. So it's very common, very hard to break unless you recognise it, and we're going to talk about some tools that you can use to break that cycle next. So first of all, we're going to look at something called the 3 Ps principle, and that's for managing energy levels with a long-term health condition. The 3 Ps stand for plan, prioritise and pace. So we're going to look at those in order now. The first tool that we're going to look at to help us with the planning is an activity or fatigue diary. There are lots of different examples of these on the internet. This is one example, so where we have the days of the week down one side, the times of the day across the top, and then we have little sections where you can write what activity you're doing on that day at that time, and then giving it a score. So for the score, that's a fatigue score. So how tired did you feel at the time of doing that activity? And some people like to use numbers 1 to 5. So 1, no fatigue or minimal fatigue, and then 5, severe fatigue, or a traffic light system, so green, amber, red. So when you fill that in for the week, you can see what is causing you the most fatigue and look to see, if you can make any adjustments. So this helps with a lot of things. So it can help you to establish baselines. So if you, on your diary, let's say that you had walking to the shop and it was a 15-minute walk to the shop, and you scored that as a red activity, severe fatigue. You could then look to lower that to break it down. So the next time, maybe try walking 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and finding where is your baseline, how much activity can you do before it triggers severe fatigue. So it's good for helping to establish your limits, your baselines. It can help with planning. So if you think about what you have to do for the week, and then plan that out into the calendar, into your diary. So you're spreading activities out throughout the week. You've not got a lot of heavy activity at the beginning of the week and light activity at the end. Even spreading things out throughout the day. So you're doing some things in the morning, having rests, and then other things in the afternoon. So it can help with planning. So that's part of pacing sort of activities. So you're intermingling sort of rest with physical activities and cognitive activities, that's brain activities. So we're going to talk about pacing a bit later on as part of the 3 Ps. It can help to identify patterns. So you might find when you've filled in the diaries for a few weeks that your fatigue is worse in the morning or an afternoon, and then you can look at scheduling activities to relate to that. It may be also that you realise that you're going into the boom and bust pattern that we talked about. So it might be that you're doing a lot of activities and then you're getting really fatigued and not able to do much in the afternoon because you've tried to cram things in all together. And that's the first part of being able to address it, is to recognise it. It may also identify patterns such as the post-exertional malaise that we talked about, where the fatigue doesn't come in until maybe the day after or the day after that. So you might find that suddenly you've got a day where you've not done much, you've had a restful day, but you're really fatigued and you don't know why that is. But if you look back for the day before or a couple of days before, it might show you where that fatigue has come from. So it helps to identify patterns. It can help to safely expand activities. So by seeing where your limits are, where your baselines are, you can then over time, as you start to manage the fatigue better and you're not going into that boom and bust sort of up and down pattern and things are levelling out, you might want to try gently expanding your activities but keeping it within your limits. So let's say again you was walking to the shop and normally you'd walk 5 minutes and you'd be okay. You could gently expand that to maybe 10 minutes and see what effect that has on your fatigue. If that's okay, you can maybe extend it further, but as soon as that fatigue starts to increase, you know to drop back or to wait there till it's stabilized. So it helps you to keep an eye on your baselines and what effects that has on your fatigue, and helps you to expand safely without trying to push too much, push through and end back up in that boom and bust pattern. It helps with explaining. So they say a picture speaks 1,000 words. So sometimes when you have it there in front of you and you can show people, it really helps. So whether that's family and friends or medical professionals. So let's say you had showering on there and you had a lot of fatigue after the shower and you had that as red. Most people that are not living with long-term health conditions that cause fatigue would be able to jump into the shower and then get out and continue with the daily living activities without giving it any thought. It may be that a shower causes a lot of fatigue and you have to have a prolonged period of rest after a shower, and actually being able to show the level of activity that's causing your severe fatigue is really impactful and really useful tool to be able to explain to people the effects that the fatigue has on you. It can help with monitoring. So again, you know, if you are looking to expand activities a bit, it can help you to monitor that. But also it's good to be able to, as you develop skills in managing your fatigue and managing your energy levels, hopefully over time you'll be able to see the improvement. Now, sometimes when we're living through it, the improvements can be small, so you may not notice them sort of straight away, but if you look back on your fatigue diaries for a few weeks, months before, hopefully you'll be able to see that improvement and how much progress you've made, and that will help with your mental health as well, you know, and help you to feel positive about continuing with the self-management techniques. It can help you to achieve balance. So it's really important to not have all chores in your day. You know, when we've got limited energy, sometimes we end up spending that on the things that we need to do, you know, like the cooking or the cleaning, and it's important to have things in there that you enjoy too, because that helps to put good energy back into your pot. So there is some evidence as well to show that changing between physical activities and cognitive activities, that's brain activities, can help to manage fatigue. So if you're doing something physical like making the tea, and then you might want to change that so that you're doing a bit of reading or a bit of paperwork, and also making sure that you're getting rest in there as well. So you're pacing those out, you're achieving balance of different types of activity, and again preventing that boom and bust pattern. The difficulty with that boom and bust pattern is the more that you go round and round in circles, the longer it can take you to get out of that pattern. So when you get the severe fatigue, the length of time that you have to rest can be longer, you know, because you keep going round and round in that pattern. So the more that we can identify it, break it up and prevent it, the more we can make better use of our limited energy. So here is an example of a completed activity or fatigue diary. So you may want to just pop the video on pause at this point and just have a think about is there any patterns within that diary? Have a look at the activities and the level of fatigue. Is there any way that could have been managed better? Just to have a look, see what you think, and then we'll have a look at some of the main points after. From this completed activity, we can see that this person looks as though they're going into that boom and bust pattern. So we have a period where we have a lot of orange and green, so low fatigue levels, and then followed by big blocks of red. So we're going into that boom and bust pattern where lots of energy and then back into the exhaustion. Some of the positives are, if we look at Wednesday and Thursday, they have a good combination of mixing activities. So we've got physical activities mixed with brain activities, mixed with rest, and that's had a positive effect on the levels of fatigue. One of the results of overdoing things is that this person has needed to sleep a lot more. So they're sleeping in a lot longer on a morning, and then that has a knock-on effect that they haven't got as much time to fit activities in for the rest of the day, so they're cramming things in again, leading to that bust pattern. And if we notice, they didn't start planning the garden party till quite late on in the week, so they didn't start planning until Thursday, and so they had a lot of activities then, a lot to fit into that back end of the week rather than spreading things throughout the week. And unfortunately it probably meant that they didn't enjoy the party as much, because we've got a lot of red blocks there for the weekend. So this is just one example of an activity and fatigue diary, and the type of things that you can pick up when you're reflecting back on that diary. And for the rest of the workshops, we're going to look at how you can manage some of those activities to make them easier to manage, so that they have less impact on your energy levels and you have more energy to spend. Right, so we've reached about the halfway point now. So if you haven't already, it might be a good time to take a little break. So remember, everything we do has an energy value. So just sitting and listening and taking things in, thinking, that all has an impact on energy. So it's got to break those activities up and take a little break. So maybe pop the presentation on pause and either change that activity up and get up and have a stretch and a little bit of a walk around, or just sit quietly with your eyes closed, cutting out those sensory stimulation, and just have a little rest. And I'll see you in a few minutes. Another helpful way to plan activities is to use something called the spoons theory. So this was developed by a lady called Christine Miserandino in 2003. And it was a way that she used to describe chronic fatigue to her friends and family. So Christine has lupus, which causes chronic fatigue, and it was a visual way to explain to people how the chronic fatigue affected her. It is also useful to help to plan your day and spread out activities. So what she did, she had some spoons. She was sat in a cafe with her friends, and she took the spoons out of the pot in the middle of the table and laid them out in front of her. So let's say she had 6 spoons, and she classed each spoon as a unit of energy, and she only had so many spoons to last her the day, so 6 spoons to last her the full day. So for people who are not living with a long-term health condition that causes fatigue, they usually wake up in a morning and have an unlimited amount of spoons. So they don't really think about what they're doing. So they might get up, they might jump in the shower and then go to work, and then maybe call at the supermarket after work, get home, get changed, go out for the evening to meet friends, come back, sleep, and so on. So they've got an unlimited amount of spoons to use throughout that day. For ourselves who are living with long-term health conditions, we only have a limited amount of spoons or a limited amount of energy for that day. So if we think of the spoons as equaling 1 unit of energy, everybody will have a different amount of spoons. So for some people, 1 spoon may mean that they can cook the tea or have a shower, and that's equal to 1 unit of energy for them. For someone else with very severe fatigue, it might be 1 spoon might be brushing your teeth, 1 spoon might be eating a meal. So it's finding what level of energy you have for the day and what 1 spoon means to you. So if you've got 6 spoons, then the principle would be to spread that energy throughout the day. So some people actually get the spoons out and they put them back in the drawer once they've used that energy. So let's say you have 6 spoons. 1 spoon is getting up, getting dressed, brushing your teeth. So then that spoon goes away, you're left with 5. Another spoon may be taking the dog for a short walk. Again, put that away, you're left with 4. Then you may have lunch or coffee with a friend. Another spoon, that's gone in the drawer. So you've only got 3 left. What it helps you to do is know that you need to leave some spoons for the end of the day. So maybe you need to make tea, and you certainly need one for your bedtime routine. So instead of using all those spoons in the morning, it helps you to visualize and spread those activities out throughout the day. So you're not going again into that boom and bust pattern, because if you've used all your spoons in the morning, you still need to eat tea and you still need to get ready for bed and do your nighttime routine. So you end up using some more spoons than you've got and you end up into that bust pattern. So it's just a good visual way of monitoring that energy through the day, thinking about saving your energy, thinking about pacing that, spreading that out so that you've got enough energy at the end of the day. Also a good tool to explain to others, as Christine did as well. So now let's have a look at the second P, which stands for prioritise. So think about what is important to you. Have you got things that you need to do during the day that are essential or urgent? Can anything wait until another day? Or can you delegate any tasks to somebody else? Can anyone help? So a partner, family, friends, older children. Does it have to be done at all? Do you want to do it? That's important as well, making sure that it's not all chores that you're doing during the day. Or can you make any adaptations to what you're doing to make that task easier? Just remember to create a balance of needs and wants. It's important to put some nice activities in there as well. It's okay to say no. We sometimes find that really difficult, especially if we've always been the person that helps others. But it is okay to say no. If you know that it's going to push you over your limits, then look after yourself. Remember, everybody needs help sometimes. So for whatever reason that is in life, we all need help sometimes. So remember to look after yourself and be kind to yourself as well. Think, if it was a friend that was struggling with fatigue, what would you say to them? Remember to be kind to yourself too. So now let's think about the third P, which stands for pace. So we've talked about pacing things out, spreading things out throughout the week or throughout the day, and pacing things. So we've got a mixture of different types of activity. And now we're going to look at something called the 50% rule. So if you think how long you can usually spend on an activity before the fatigue kicks in, then cut that number in half. Stop and rest for a while before starting again for the second half. And if you need to continue doing that until the end of the activity. So let's take, for example, if you were walking to the shop and it normally takes 10 minutes when you start to feel that fatigue kicking in? When should you stop and rest before continuing? So normally you walk for 10 minutes and you really start to feel that fatigue kicking in. At what point should you have stopped and rest? So it would be at about 5 minutes. So if you think we cut that number in half, so the fatigue starts to kick in at 10 minutes, cut that number in half, so rest when you get to 5 minutes. Have a short rest, so it might be just perching on a wall, just stopping and standing for a little while, and then starting again. So it doesn't have to be long, a couple of minutes, even a minute, just to help you get that rest and carry on for the next 5 minutes. And you should find by doing that when you reach the shop, you're less fatigued than you were if you'd have just pushed on and pushed through that tiredness and continued. As an example, if you was walking around Pugneys Lake and you normally get halfway round and you really start to feel the fatigue kicking in, maybe try walking a quarter of the way round and having a sit and a rest on a bench for a few minutes and then carrying on. When you get to halfway, sit and have a rest and continue to do that. So 3/4 of the way, sit and have a rest, and at the end, sit and have a rest. So by doing that again, you should find that you can get round the lake easier and you're not going into that bust pattern by pushing through and pushing past your limits. So that's the 50% rule. It's a really good tool to use to make sure that you're staying within your limits and you're not pushing through. Usually by the time you start to feel that fatigue kicking in, it's too late. You've pushed through. So this is a good way of planning and pacing things so that you're not at risk of pushing past your limits pattern. Another good visual tool to think about when looking at the importance of pacing and rest is to think of your body as a human battery. So if you completely drain that battery, you have to wait to then recharge it before you can use it again. So if it was a mobile phone, and if you completely drain the battery, you have to plug it in before you can use it again. But if you keep topping up that battery, so if it was your phone and you made regular top-ups before it went completely flat, it's always ready to use. You can continue using the phone. So if you think of your body as a human battery, if you drain the battery completely and you overdo things, then your body will force you to rest and go to bed and need that recovery time. But if you keep topping that battery up with things like breaking activities down, putting in some rest and enjoyable activities so that you're not exhausting yourself to the point of being bust, then you can continue to do activities and manage your energy levels well. Another useful tool is to rank activities. So it may be helpful to make a list of how tiring you find different tasks. Maybe use your activity diary to identify how tiring activities are. Look for the ones that are red. Look at ranking them with the traffic light system and seeing which ones take up the most energy. Then you can look at spreading out the red activities throughout the day or throughout the week. Maybe if you find someone to help with the red activities, or ways that you can make those tasks easier so they take less energy. Activity ranks will be different for everyone. So what somebody finds really tiring, others won't, and vice versa. They may be different than what you think when you reflect back. So having a good awareness of what uses a lot of energy for you is really useful when you're looking at the 3 P's: planning, prioritising and pacing. So you might want to just press pause again now, just to have a little think about some of the activities that you do, and just have a reflect. Are physical or cognitive tasks more difficult for you? Do they take up more energy? Or is it a bit of a mix? So maybe just have a think about which tasks take most of your energy, and are there ways in which you could make that task easier so it took less energy? So breaking tasks down is another really good tool to use to help conserve energy levels. So let's consider if you can break red activities down into smaller tasks so that they use less energy, or find different ways of doing them. So we can change those red activities on the list into amber or green activities, and that can help to conserve your energy levels. So let's take the example of you have friends coming around for Sunday lunch. How can you make that task easier? So think about right back to preparing before they come for lunch on the day. How can you make those steps, each one of those steps, easier to conserve energy? So if you just pop your video on pause for a few minutes, just have a think about the processes of somebody coming for Sunday lunch and how you might make that easier. And then we'll have a chat together about some of the tips. Okay, so if we think right back to sort of planning, then maybe you could do online shopping. So that takes a lot less energy than going around the supermarket. Maybe you could spread preparation tasks throughout the week. So things like tidying the house, getting a shower, rather than doing them on the day. So again, that saves your energy for making the meal. Are there things within the meal that you could do in advance? So could you make the Yorkshire puddings in advance and freeze them? When you are preparing things like the vegetables, can you do that seated? Even standing up takes more energy than sitting down. So any task that you can do seated will help to save that little bit of energy for something else later in the day, make that task easier. Or can you buy pre-prepared vegetables? You can get them in those little foil trays that you can just put in the oven, even less energy. Can you make your meat in something like a slow cooker, so you're not having to get up and down and keep checking the meat? You know that it's just going to cook slowly throughout the day and it's not going to burn. And some people find kitchen timers really handy. So with the cognitive fatigue, the brain fog, quite often, you know, people say that they forget the cooking and they end up burning food. So having a kitchen timer is a really good way of monitoring that, and for safety reasons as well, that you're not going to burn the food. Can anybody help with preparing things? Or can you ask people to bring a dish? So somebody brings the meat, somebody brings the pudding. So it's not all on you. Or can you even make a different meal? So does it have to be Sunday lunch? You know, can it be a chili that you could do in the slow cooker, or something that takes less energy? So this is a really good method to use for all activities, and when you start to do it and you practice that regularly, it will become automatic. So whatever you're doing, think, is there a way that I can make this task easier that uses less energy? So that helps prevent you from going into that boom and bust. It makes better use of your limited energy throughout the day so that you can do more. And it helps so that you've got energy left to do some of those nice things that you want to do. So it's not all chores. So that brings us to the end of the first session. So next time we'll look at exploring rest. So we'll look at what rest means, what is good quality rest, and how we can achieve that. We're going to look at more ways to reduce energy demands, discuss more tools to manage our energy. We're going to talk about sleep, look at managing setbacks, consider our general health and well-being, and find out about additional resources for support. So lots more to come. I hope that you found the information in this session useful and the tools helpful, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.